I already have another wife. Don't call me anymore. I stared at the text message on my phone, blinking to make sure I was reading it correctly. The physical therapy wing of the hospital was quiet except for the distant beeping of machines. 3 weeks after a car accident that nearly killed me, while I was still learning how to stand again, my fiancé of 4 years decided to break up with me. By text. Everything okay, sweetheart? Nurse Heather glanced up from her clipboard, catching the expression on my face. I locked my phone screen, forcing a smile. Just peachy? My voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. The pain in my legs flared as I shifted in the wheelchair, a brutal reminder of how dependent I'd become. For 3 weeks, I'd been fighting through recovery, waiting for Brian to visit. He never did. Not once. Even though we'd been together for 4 years. Even though we were supposed to get married this summer. I unlocked my phone again, read the message 3 more times. Each word felt like a physical blow, worse than the impact that had shattered my legs. With trembling fingers, I took a screenshot of the message, blocked his number, then placed my phone face down on the table. Could you call Dr. Rivera? I asked Heather, my voice steadier than I expected. I'd like to discuss adding extra physical therapy sessions to my schedule. Heather's eyebrows shot up. You're already doing the maximum recommended. I need to walk again. As soon as possible. I cut her off, my mind calculating. The joint bank account where I'd saved $45,000 for medical expenses, the apartment lease in my name, his car payments that came from my account. Even the engagement ring he'd surprised me with. I'd found the receipt later. I'd paid for it all. 4 years together, and Brian had finally shown me exactly who he was. I just wished he hadn't waited until I was broken to do it. Updated. Hey, everyone. Your responses to my first post absolutely blew me away. Thank you for all the support. I'm still processing Brian's text, and honestly, writing it out felt like ripping off a Band-Aid. I'm lying in my hospital bed right now, legs aching from PT, but your comments are keeping me going. I'll keep you posted, promise. What's the pettiest thing you've done to get back at an ex? I could use some inspiration, even if it's just for a laugh. I met Brian at a corporate holiday party 4 years ago. He worked in marketing at a partner company, and from the moment he approached me with a glass of champagne and a crooked smile, I was hooked. He was magnetic. The kind of charismatic that makes you feel like the only person in a crowded room. 3 months later, he moved into my apartment. Looking back, I should have seen it as suspicious how quickly he gave up his own place. At first, the financial imbalance seemed temporary. Just until my commission check comes in, he'd say, borrowing a few $100s. Or, this investment will pay off big time, but I need seed money. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He was brilliant, convincing, and seemed genuinely ambitious. Within a year, we'd merged finances. I handled the bills because I was better with details. Translation: I paid for everything while he contributed nothing. My salary from my executive position at a tech company easily covered our expenses, so I didn't mind at first. He always had reasons for his financial struggles. Terrible bosses who undervalued him, jealous colleagues who sabotaged his projects, bad timing in the market. The red flags were there, waving furiously in my face. He never introduced me to his friends from college, despite mentioning them constantly. His phone was password protected, and he'd take calls outside on the balcony, even in winter. Weekends would sometimes include unexplained absences, a guy's trip or networking event that left no digital footprint. I'd find receipts for restaurants in neighboring towns I never went to, charged to our joint credit card. But the biggest warning came just before my accident. I'd been offered a major promotion. International team lead, based in Singapore for 2 years. Double the salary, career-making opportunity. When I told Brian, he didn't congratulate me. Instead, he paced our living room, asking rapid-fire questions about long-distance relationships and whether I trusted him enough to leave him alone. That night, driving home from dinner on a mountain road, my car somehow went off the road. The last thing I remembered was the guardrail giving way. The real gut punch came during my 3rd hour of physical therapy that day. My phone buzzed with a FaceTime call from my best friend, Emily. Hey, are you sitting down? She asked when I answered, then winced. Sorry, bad joke, but seriously, I need to tell you something. Brian already beat you to it, I said flatly. He dumped me by text. Emily's eyes widened. That son of a... Wait, that's not even what I was calling about. She hesitated, then continued. I just saw Brian at Rosario's. He was with a woman and they looked cozy, like really familiar with each other. She paused. She's pregnant, Sam. Before I could respond, a photo appeared in our chat. Brian sitting across from a dark-haired woman at a corner table, his hand resting on hers, her swollen belly visible even from a distance. I zoomed in, feeling like I'd been punched all over again. "That's Melissa," I whispered. "She worked with him at Parker Media. He always said they barely knew each other." I hung up and immediately called Jason, my college friend who works in IT. "I need a favor," I said, skipping the pleasantries. "Can you look up someone on social media? Deep dive?" I gave him Melissa's full name. 20 minutes later, Jason called back. "Sam, you might want to brace yourself," he said. "Brian and Melissa have been married for 2 years. There are wedding photos, anniversary posts, everything. He's been living a double life." My hands shook as I opened my banking app. The joint account where I'd saved $45,000 for my medical expenses now showed a balance of $250.32. He'd drained it almost immediately after my accident. Updated OMG, guys. I'm shaking as I write this. Just got off the phone with Jason, and the truth about Brian is worse than I could have imagined. Your DMs and comments are my lifeline right now. Seriously. Have you ever uncovered a massive lie from someone you trusted? I stared at my motionless legs, then at the nearly empty bank account on my screen. Crystal clarity washed over me like a cold shower. For 4 years, I'd been nothing but an ATM with benefits to Brian. The moment I became a liability, injured, needing support rather than providing it, he not only abandoned me, he robbed me. And yet, looking at my useless legs and the physical therapist waiting patiently across the room, I felt something unexpected. Determination. White-hot, unshakable resolve. I wouldn't just recover, I would excel. I would walk again faster than anyone expected, reclaim my finances, and make damn sure Brian faced consequences for what he'd done. Not out of vengeance, but justice. I called Dr. Rivera over. "I need to ask a favor," I said quietly. "If anyone calls about me, anyone, I want you to tell them I'm not progressing well. That the outlook isn't good for full recovery." He studied me for a moment. "May I ask why?" "The man who cleaned out my bank account thinks I'm helpless," I said. "I'd like to keep it that way until I'm ready." Dr. Rivera's eyes darkened with understanding. "No updates on your progress. Got it." He paused. "For what it's worth, with your determination, I think you'll be walking unassisted sooner than the standard timeline suggests." That afternoon, I initiated 3 recovery plans simultaneously. Physical therapy 3 times daily to rebuild my strength, calls to my bank and a lawyer to freeze remaining assets and build a fraud case, and finally, a strategic plan for how exactly I would re-enter Brian's life when he least expected it. 1 month of triple therapy sessions turned into 2. Every morning began with strength training, followed by balance exercises, and ended with assisted walking. Every night ended with ice packs on my swollen legs and calls with my lawyer, building a case against Brian. The progress was slow but steady, like watching grass grow, except the grass was my ability to stand without collapsing. By the 6th week, I could take wobbly steps with a walker. By week 8, I graduated to crutches. My physical therapist, Miguel, called me his miracle patient. Though we both knew it wasn't a miracle, it was sheer stubbornness and triple the recommended therapy hours. Meanwhile, the private investigator I'd hired through my lawyer was building a comprehensive file on Brian's double life. The findings were staggering. Not only had he been married to Melissa for our entire relationship, but he'd been systematically siphoning money from my accounts for years. Small amounts at first, then larger withdrawals as he gained more access. He'd used my social security number to open credit cards in my name. He'd even forged my signature on loan documents. What infuriated me most was learning about his newest con. Through hospital staff who'd become my friends, I discovered Brian had been calling the administrative office weekly, not to check on my condition, but to inquire about insurance payouts and settlements related to my accident. When told such information could only be released to me, he began claiming to be my husband. But the real twist came when Jason called me one evening. "You won't believe this," he said. "Brian is organizing a charity event. For you." "What?" I nearly dropped the phone. "Well, not specifically for you, for accident victims and their families. But he's using your story, his story, to fundraise. He's positioned himself as this devoted fiancé whose life is derailed by tragedy. There are posters with your name and his face. It's scheduled for next month at the Grand Meridian Hotel." I pulled up the event page Jason sent me. There it was. Standing Together, a benefit for accident survivors and their loved ones, hosted by Brian Mitchell. The page featured a professionally shot photo of Brian looking soulfully into the distance, along with a heartbreaking story about his fiancée's devastating accident and partial paralysis, how he was standing by her through the darkest times. My blood boiled, then froze, then transformed into something altogether more powerful: determination. "Jason," I said slowly, "I need a ticket to this event." "Already bought you one," he replied. "Front row." By the time the benefit rolled around, I was walking with a single cane, and only on difficult days. Most of the time, I could manage short distances unassisted, though with a noticeable limp. My doctor assured me even that would fade with time and continued therapy. The lawyer had compiled a steel trap case. We had documented every fraudulent transaction, every forged signature, every penny stolen. The private investigator had documented Brian's comings and goings between his life with Melissa and his lies about caring for me. Most damningly, we had recordings of him attempting to access my medical information and insurance settlements by claiming to be my husband. Fraud and identity theft. Cleanly documented. The night of the benefit, I dressed with extraordinary care. A fitted red dress that showed off the muscle tone I'd developed during recovery, professional makeup, and hair styled to perfection. I arranged for a car service to drop me at the exact time Brian would be taking the stage, according to the program. Entering the Grand Meridian's ballroom required every ounce of physical and emotional strength I possessed. The place was packed with people who believed they were supporting a noble cause. Large screens displayed photos of Brian visiting hospitals, never mine, and speaking earnestly about the challenges faced by those who stand by injured loved ones. I waited in the back as he approached the podium. The room quieted. He looked exactly as I remembered. Handsome, confident, utterly convinced of his own charisma. "Thank you all for coming tonight," he began, his voice practiced in its sincerity. "As many of you know, my life changed forever 3 months ago when my fiancée Samantha was in a tragic accident." That was my cue. With steady steps that betrayed none of the effort they required, I walked down the center aisle toward the stage. At first, no one noticed. Just another late arrival. Then heads began to turn. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Brian continued, unaware of the disturbance. "The road to recovery is long and uncertain. Some days the doctors aren't sure if she'll ever—" "Ever what, Brian?" I called out, my voice carrying across the now silent room. He froze mid-sentence, eyes locking onto mine. The blood drained from his face so quickly I thought he might faint. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound emerged. I continued walking until I reached the steps to the stage. "Don't stop on my account," I said, loud enough for the microphones to pick up. "You were just explaining to these generous people how you've been standing by my hospital bed supporting me through my tragic paralysis." I glanced around the room. "Which is interesting, considering you haven't visited me once since the accident." "Not once." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Brian's eyes darted frantically, looking for an escape route. Finding none, he attempted damage control. "Sam, you're walking. It's a miracle." He moved as if to embrace me, but I raised my hand, stopping him cold. "No miracle. Just thousands of hours of physical therapy that you would have known about if you'd bothered to check on me instead of emptying our joint account of $45,000 the day after my accident." The murmurs in the crowd grew louder. Someone near the front said clearly, "What the hell?" I turned to address the audience directly. "I apologize to everyone who came here tonight believing they were supporting a good cause. I'm Samantha Ellis, the woman in whose name this event was organized, without my knowledge or consent. The man standing before you is indeed my former fiancé, who abandoned me immediately after my accident, stole my savings, and apparently has been married to another woman our entire relationship." Brian finally found his voice. "She's confused from her medications," he attempted, looking around desperately. "The accident affected her memory." "Save it," I cut him off. "Your wife Melissa might be interested in these." I nodded to Jason, who had appeared at my side, handing folders to people in the front row. "Those contain documentation of every fraudulent transaction, every identity theft attempt, and the record of your marriage 2 years ago, while you were engaged to me." Security personnel began moving toward us, unsure who they should be removing from the event. I made it easy for them. "I've already filed charges," I said to Brian, whose face had moved from white to green. "The police will be contacting you tomorrow. I just wanted to see your face when your little empire of lies came crashing down." I turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and I accepted that job in Singapore. I start next month." As I walked back up the aisle, head high despite the pain shooting through my legs, the room erupted behind me. Some people were shouting questions, others were demanding refunds, and through it all, I could hear Brian's increasingly desperate attempts to regain control of the situation. Outside, Emily waited with the car, engine running. "Well?" she asked as I slid into the passenger seat. For the first time in months, I smiled. A real, genuine smile that reached all the way to my eyes. "Drive," I said simply. "I'm finally free." 6 months later, I stood on the rooftop of my company's Singapore office, watching the sunset paint the skyline in shades of gold and purple. My physical therapy had continued throughout my relocation, and now my limp was barely noticeable. My strength had returned, not just physically, but emotionally and financially as well. The legal aftermath of Brian's fraud had been swift and comprehensive. When faced with the mountain of evidence my lawyer presented, he had no choice but to accept a plea deal. He and Melissa, who claimed ignorance of his double life, though evidence suggested otherwise, were ordered to repay every cent they'd stolen plus damages. They were also sentenced to 200 hours of community service each. Real community service at an actual rehabilitation center for accident victims. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. My company had been incredibly supportive, delaying my international assignment until I was medically cleared to travel. Now, leading a team of 30 across 6 countries, I was thriving professionally in ways I couldn't have imagined while lying in that hospital bed. My phone buzzed with a text from Jason, who had become something more than a friend in recent months. His IT firm had an office in Singapore too, a coincidence we were both grateful for. "Dinner at 8?" The message read. "That new place by the river?" I smiled and typed back a quick affirmative response. Life had a strange way of clearing the path when obstacles appeared. Had Brian not shown his true colors, I might still be supporting him, still believing his lies, still compromising my dreams for someone who saw me as nothing but a resource to exploit. The accident that nearly killed me had, ironically, saved me from a life of deception. "Ms. Ellis?" My assistant appeared in the doorway. "Your 4 a.m. is here." I nodded, taking one last look at the skyline. The old Samantha would have obsessed over Brian's betrayal, let it define her and dictate her future choices. But standing here now, on the other side of the world, living the life I'd earned through my own strength and resilience, I realized something powerful. Sometimes it takes life breaking you apart to show you what you're truly made of. That accident hadn't just rebuilt my body, it had rebuilt my entire life, stronger and more authentically than before. And for that, strangely enough, I was grateful. As I walked into the meeting room, steady on my own 2 feet, I couldn't help but wonder if Brian ever thought about the woman he'd underestimated so severely, the woman he thought would stay broken, the woman who stood up and walked away. What would you have done in my situation? Would you have confronted your ex publicly, or handled things differently? Have you ever discovered someone was living a double life? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you've been through something similar and came out stronger, I'd love to hear your story. Final update. Hey everyone. It's been a wild ride, but I'm finally on the other side. Writing this from my new office in Singapore, watching the sunset and feeling like a completely different person. Confronting Brian at his fake charity event was the most empowering moment of my life. Seeing his face go pale when I walked in? Priceless. The legal hammer dropped hard and he's paying back every stolen cent. I'm walking almost normally now, killing it at my dream job, and even starting something new with Jason. Shh, don't jinx it. Your support through every post kept me sane, and I mean that. This community helped me find my strength. I'm closing this chapter, but I'll stick around to cheer you all on. What's the moment in your life when you realized you were stronger than you thought? Spill your stories. I need to hear them.